The humans had been traveling through the stars for decades, slowly expanding their reach beyond the familiar planets of the solar system. Their ships moved steadily through space, not as conquerors, but as explorers. One such fleet, a small group of ships carrying scientists, engineers, and diplomats, approached the border of a world that had long been whispered about in human space as the seat of an ancient alien. Empire, John Carter was among them. A systems engineer who had spent most of his life working on starship engines and communication arrays, he was not a soldier, not a diplomat, and certainly not a hero in anyone's eyes. Yet here he was on the bridge of the starship horizon, feeling the weight of something far larger than his understanding. Humans had expected contact, perhaps even conflict, but nothing like what awaited them on the surface of the alien Palace World. As their ships descended through the alien skies, the fleet was met by ships that seemed to float without engines, shimmering with colors that humans could barely perceive. The human sensors struggled to make sense of the alien technology, their engineers whispering in awe about energy signatures and shield harmonics that defied understanding. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. When the human delegation landed, they were met by a court that radiated power. The palace was vast, built from materials that seemed to flow and shift like liquid crystal. Guards moved with grace and precision, their movements coordinated in ways that suggested both discipline and artistry. Humans, usually confident in their ability to adapt, found themselves momentarily unsure, even hesitant. The humans had been prepared for ceremony, for diplomacy, maybe even intimidation. What no one had expected was the proclamation. The alien queen, towering and regal, stepped forward. Her voice, amplified by some alien technology, filled the vast hall. She spoke in the human common language, chosen deliberately, each word measured and heavy with meaning. "You are the father of my heir," she declared. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. There was silence, the kind that presses against the ears, making breathing feel loud. John Carter, standing near the center of the human group, felt his stomach drop. He glanced at the others, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and disbelief. He looked back at the queen, unsure if he had heard her correctly. His mind raced. How could this be? Why would she say something so impossible? Humans were ordinary in a universe full of unimaginable power. Their technology was crude compared to that of the alien empire. Their bodies, their genes, their very history seemed like a whisper compared to the legacy of the queen's species. Yet here she was, proclaiming that he, a simple engineer, was somehow the father of her child. The human ambassador, Alex Turner, stepped forward, his voice calm but tense. "Your Majesty, there must be some mistake," he said, bowing respectfully. "John Carter is an engineer. He has no connection to your family, no?" He paused, searching for the right words in a situation that defied logic. No authority or relation that could lead to this. "We need to understand what you mean." The queen's expression did not change. Her eyes, deep and ancient, seemed to pierce through Alex's words. "There is no mistake," she said simply. "I have watched your kind, studied your kind. I have seen qualities in him that are rare, qualities my heir will need. He is the father because he embodies what the child must inherit." John felt his knees weaken slightly. He was no one special, just a man who had spent his life repairing machines and ensuring that communication lines stayed open. He was not a warrior, not a politician, not a diplomat. Yet somehow, he was at the center of a declaration that could shift. It's the balance of power in the galaxy. The humans tried to recover their composure. Lisa Brown, the cultural liaison, whispered to Alex, "What does she mean, qualities? Traits? DNA? Personality? Emotional strength? I don't understand." Alex shook his head, unable to answer. They had been trained for difficult situations, for first contact scenarios, for negotiations that could mean life or death. But nothing in their training had prepared them for this. The alien queen, it seemed, was making a choice based not on politics or conquest, but on something deeper, something profoundly human. John stepped forward. His voice was unsteady, but he forced himself to speak. Your Majesty, I don't know why you think I should be. Whatever you mean. I'm just a man, one of your guests. I have nothing special. The Queen inclined her head slightly, acknowledging his words. You underestimate what is special, she said. Strength is not measured in power or weapons. It is measured in choice, in courage, in the ability to care for another without expectation. You have shown these traits perhaps without even knowing it. The humans were stunned. John's own disbelief mirrored that of his colleagues. He had simply been himself, doing his job. Working alongside these aliens during their joint projects to understand survival strategies and energy networks, he had treated the Queen with respect, shared insights honestly, and approached problems logically. There had been no grand heroism, no daring acts of bravery, just human decency and competence. And that, apparently, was enough. As the initial shock wore off, whispers began to circulate in the alien court. Nobles and officials muttered to each other, some curious, some angry, some skeptical. The humans could sense the tension, the undercurrent of fear and disbelief. The Queen's proclamation had upset centuries of expectation, tradition, and hierarchy. For the first time in generations, a human had been placed at the center of the Empire's future. The day stretched on with formalities that seemed almost unreal. John and the human delegation were led through vast chambers, each more beautiful and alien than the last. The air was scented with unfamiliar fragrances, the floors shimmered like liquid, and the walls displayed histories of a civilization so old that humans could barely comprehend it. All the while, the Queen watched, calm and poised, her presence a constant reminder of the announcement. Despite the wonder of the surroundings, John felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He understood, in some instinctive way, that the Queen's choice was not a mere whim. It carried consequences, not just for him, but for humanity. The way humans responded, the way they behaved under scrutiny, could determine whether they were seen as equals, allies, or something else entirely. He spent moments alone in reflection, thinking about his life back on Earth. The quiet town where he grew up, the friends he had left behind, the simple joys and small struggles of being human. It was those very qualities, the empathy, the curiosity, the willingness to act with integrity, that now seemed to have cosmic significance. As evening fell over the alien world, the human delegation gathered to discuss their next steps. They were tired, overwhelmed, but also quietly exhilarated. They realized that humanity's story was larger than technology or firepower. It was about character, adaptability, and the ability to make choices that mattered. John's calm reaction, his honesty, and his willingness to confront the unimaginable head-on had set a precedent. That night, John found himself alone in a quiet chamber, looking out at the alien sky. The twin moons glowed softly, and distant stars sparkled like scattered gems. He thought about the child, the future, and the unknown paths that now lay ahead. He did not know what would happen next, but he understood one thing clearly. Humanity had been seen, truly seen, in a way that no one had anticipated, and for the first time in the history of human expansion, a human man was at the center of an alien empire's destiny. John Carter, an ordinary man by human standards, had become extraordinary in ways he could barely grasp. The journey was only beginning, and the stars above held promises, challenges, and mysteries that no one could yet predict. But one thing was certain: the humans would be tested, and they would have to rise to meet the expectations placed upon them, not with weapons or cunning, but with the qualities that made them human. After the Queen's startling announcement, the humans spent weeks on the alien world trying to understand the truth behind her choice. The palace, which had seemed like a marvel, became a place of intense observation. Every hallway, every chamber, and every moment of interaction held subtle clues about the Queen's decision. John Carter, the man at the center of it all, found himself constantly reflecting on what had brought him here. The Queen was not cruel or capricious. She spent hours in private consultation with John and the human delegation, explaining her reasoning. She spoke of her species' long history, of a civilization that had reached the peak of technological achievement, but had begun to lose its vitality. Generations of genetic refinement had made them powerful, intelligent, and long-lived, but also fragile in unexpected ways. She explained that the future of her empire depended not only on strength and knowledge, but on resilience, creativity, and a moral compass, qualities she saw in John and, more broadly, in humans. John listened carefully, still trying to process the weight of her words. He had lived an ordinary life, one filled with work, friends, and small personal victories. He had never imagined that such life experiences could be seen as extraordinary by another species. Yet the Queen was clear. Humanity possessed traits that could not be engineered or manufactured. Empathy, adaptability, and the ability to act in ways that protected others, even at personal risk, were rare across the galaxy. She believed these traits were essential to her child's development. The humans accompanying John, especially diplomat Lisa Brown and Commander Alex Turner, began to see the situation from a new perspective. They had initially assumed the Queen's declaration was symbolic or ceremonial, perhaps a way to test human loyalty. Now it seemed much deeper than that. The Queen had studied humanity, observed them carefully during prior exchanges, and found something uniquely valuable. This realization brought both awe and concern. The humans understood that the stakes were higher than any negotiation they had faced. The Queen arranged for private meetings. Between John and her advisors, these advisors were not hostile. They were deeply curious, often skeptical, but willing to listen. John found himself explaining human ways of thinking, decision-making, and moral judgment. He talked about the way humans cared for their children, the bonds of friendship and trust, and the small choices made daily that defined character. His words were simple, but they resonated. The aliens listened, fascinated by a perspective so different from their own, where decisions were often driven by long-term planning, efficiency, and survival above all else. Meanwhile, the alien nobles reacted with a mix of anger and disbelief. Some could not accept that a human, a member of a relatively new and untested species, could be considered suitable for the Empire's future. Others were intrigued, seeing in John a symbol of possibility. Debates erupted in the corridors, some polite and some heated. The humans watched carefully, learning about alien politics while trying to avoid actions that could make the situation worse. John himself did not seek recognition or power. He was careful to remain grounded, to respond honestly to the Queen and her court. He explained that he was honored by her trust, but he would not use the situation for personal gain. He insisted that any child born would need guidance from both species, and that humanity's role should be one of partnership and support rather than control. His humility and sincerity impressed not only the Queen but also many alien observers who had never encountered such a straightforward approach. Over time, the humans discovered that the Queen's decision was influenced by her desire to prepare her species for the future. She had studied countless other civilizations, some that had fallen despite their strength, and she had concluded that adaptability, empathy, peril, and moral courage were as important as power and intelligence. Humanity, she noted, had survived and thrived in a chaotic galaxy, often without the advantage of overwhelming technology or ancient traditions. That resilience, she believed, was a gift that could help ensure the survival of her heir. The Queen's advisors began to cooperate with the humans, arranging discussions about education, culture, and social responsibility. They asked John to explain how humans make decisions, how they resolve conflict, and how they cultivate loyalty and trust. He shared examples from Earth history, from the quiet acts of ordinary people to the larger events that shaped human societies. The aliens were fascinated. Some of them admitted privately that they had never considered morality and empathy as strengths in the way humans did. The human leaders also started to see the bigger picture. Commander Alex Turner realized that humanity was being recognized not as a weak or insignificant species, but as one with qualities that could influence galactic history. Diplomat Lisa Brown began writing detailed reports on the lessons being learned, careful to convey both the wonder and the risks involved. John, meanwhile, remained focused on simple, everyday integrity, setting an example that quietly shifted perceptions. One afternoon, John was invited to a private audience with the Queen. She spoke softly, without ceremony, explaining that she had observed him closely during the initial meetings and subsequent discussions. She admired the way he remained calm under pressure, the honesty with which he spoke, and his refusal to exploit the situation. She told him that these qualities were precisely what she wanted her child to inherit. John, still overwhelmed, could only nod. He realized that his ordinary human traits had gained extraordinary value in this context. As the weeks passed, relationships between humans and aliens deepened, shared meals, conversations about science and philosophy, and collaborative problem-solving allowed mutual trust to grow. John observed that despite vast differences in biology and culture, the aliens responded to sincerity, compassion, and rational thought in ways similar to humans. It became clear that the Queen's decision was not a whim, but a carefully considered choice rooted in observation, reasoning, and an appreciation for the qualities that defined humanity. However, not all reactions were positive. Some alien nobles openly questioned the Queen's judgment, fearing that humanity might weaken the Empire or introduce unpredictability. Whispers of rebellion circulated in hidden corners, threatening stability. On the human side, some leaders worried that their presence could spark conflict or create political complications back home. John, aware of these tensions, remained grounded, continuing to demonstrate that cooperation and honesty were more powerful than fear or manipulation. Over time, the humans realized that the Queen's choice was also a test for them. Humanity's response would indicate whether they could be trusted with influence in a complex galaxy. John's calm acceptance, his respect for alien culture, and his willingness to teach without condescension showed the aliens that humans could meet the challenge. These actions, though small, began to reshape perceptions, proving that humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers, but in character. One evening, as John walked through the palace gardens with Lisa Brown, he reflected on how far humans had come. From humble beginnings on Earth to being recognized by an ancient alien empire, humanity had demonstrated resilience, courage, and a capacity for growth. The garden filled with alien flora that glowed faintly in the dim light symbolized the fragile but persistent beauty of life itself. John realized that the story of humanity was still unfolding, and that their role in the galaxy had only just begun. The Queen's decision was no longer a simple announcement. It had become a turning point. Humans were seen not as outsiders, not as invaders or inferiors, but as potential partners, capable of contributing qualities that even the most advanced civilizations valued. John, ordinary in every way by human standards, had become the symbol of this potential. His actions, guided by honesty and moral clarity, had begun to shape the perceptions of an entire empire. As the first part of this journey drew to a close, John understood that he could not control the future. He could only act with integrity, teach others what he knew, and demonstrate the values that had brought humanity this far. The Queen's trust was not a gift to be taken lightly. It was a responsibility, one that required patience, courage, and the willingness to stand firm in the face of misunderstanding and doubt. The humans and aliens continued to learn from each other, building bridges of understanding and trust. The Queen's heir, still unborn, became a symbol of hope and collaboration between species. John knew that the challenges ahead would be significant, but he also understood that humanity's greatest strength lay not in technology or conquest, but in the qualities that define them as human. Resilience, empathy, courage, and integrity would guide them through whatever trials awaited. And so, the story of human-alien collaboration deepened. What began as a shocking proclamation had grown into a profound exploration of values, trust, and the potential for growth. Humanity had been tested, and it had shown that even in a universe of overwhelming power, ordinary people could embody extraordinary qualities. John Carter's quiet courage and humanity had become a foundation upon which a new chapter of galactic history would be built. A chapter that celebrated the enduring strength of the human spirit The days that followed the Queen's explanation were filled with tension and quiet discovery. The alien court, while outwardly composed, was alive with whispered debates and pointed glances. Some nobles could not accept that a human, a member of a younger and less powerful species, was central to the Empire's future. They questioned every interaction, every conversation, every decision made by John Carter and the humans. John himself had settled into a rhythm, observing, listening, and responding with honesty. He refused to act like a privileged guest or an advisor with secret power. He remained, in essence, himself, a human navigating an extraordinary situation. His ordinary nature, grounded in integrity and humility, became a point of fascination for the aliens. It was a different kind of strength, one they had not encountered often. Despite his calm, not everyone was convinced. Some alien nobles openly voiced their anger, arguing that the Empire should remain independent, that no outsider should influence the future of the Heir. They whispered in secret chambers about removing John, about declaring him unworthy. At the same time, some human factions back on the Horizon ships were uneasy. They worried that entanglement with alien royalty could draw humanity into conflicts far beyond their understanding. John was aware of the growing tension. He understood that his actions could have consequences not just for himself, but for humanity as a whole. He remained careful, speaking when necessary, listening more than talking, and showing respect for both human and alien perspectives. His calm demeanor, his refusal to be swayed by fear or pride, began to change perceptions. Even some of the skeptical nobles started to see that humanity's strength lay not in force or conquest, but in consistency, moral courage, and empathy. One afternoon, John was asked to participate in a discussion about the heir's future education and upbringing. He entered a large chamber, lined with alien records and holographic displays that illustrated generations of knowledge. The room was filled with advisors, nobles, and scholars, all curious, all skeptical. John spoke carefully, describing how humans teach values, problem-solving, and cooperation. He emphasized that the child would benefit from understanding not only alien traditions, but also human ways of thinking and moral reasoning. His words were met with a mix of surprise and contemplation. The aliens had not considered that knowledge and upbringing could include emotional intelligence, empathy, and moral courage as important elements. John explained that humans, though physically weaker, had survived and thrived by relying on understanding, negotiation, and care for each other. He gave examples from Earth's history, from communities working together to survive natural disasters. Two families making sacrifices for the next generation. The discussion grew heated when some nobles questioned whether humans could be trusted to guide the heir without seeking personal gain. John responded with humility, acknowledging that humanity was not perfect, but that his presence was guided by honesty and a commitment to partnership. He emphasized that the goal was not to dominate, but to collaborate. This perspective, simple yet sincere, made an impression back on the human ships. Commander Alex Turner and diplomat Lisa Brown worked to ensure that humanity maintained a clear stance. They advised John to remain transparent and consistent, to demonstrate that humans could act responsibly under scrutiny. They understood that alien perceptions were shaped not by power alone, but by trust and moral clarity. Every small act of integrity could tip the balance in favor of cooperation. The palace itself was a place of constant observation. John noticed that even minor gestures were watched closely. A polite nod, a careful choice of words, a patient response, all these things carried weight. He began to understand that human qualities, often taken for granted, were now central to interstellar diplomacy. Each moment, each interaction, became an opportunity to show that humanity could rise to meet the challenge. One day, a group of alien nobles confronted John privately. They questioned him about loyalty, about the potential for humans to influence decisions, and about whether he could withstand pressure from his own people. John listened, nodding, and answered honestly. He acknowledged humanity's flaws, but emphasized the strength found in resilience, fairness, and moral courage. He explained that humans, when guided by principles rather than fear, could make choices that benefited all. The nobles, while not fully convinced, left with a new perspective on what it meant to be human. At the same time, the queen remained a steady presence. She supported John not by shielding him from criticism, but by affirming that his qualities were valuable. She declared that the heir would inherit not just alien power, but human values as well. This declaration was revolutionary within the court, challenging centuries of tradition and hierarchy. John's ordinary human nature, paired with his integrity, became a symbol of what could be possible when two species collaborated. Days turned into weeks, and the tension within the court began to shift. Some of the most skeptical nobles started observing John and the humans more closely. They noticed small acts of consistency, patience, and fairness. John's refusal to manipulate or exploit his position earned respect, even from those who had doubted him the most. Slowly, a quiet transformation took place. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were participants, demonstrating that influence could be exercised through character rather than authority. Meanwhile, rumors of alien nobles plotting to remove John or undermine his influence circulated. The human delegation was aware of these risks, but they remained committed to demonstrating cooperation and integrity. John continued to act with care, never retaliating, never threatening, and never losing sight of the larger goal. His behavior became a lesson in resilience and moral strength.
Oh, yes.
Showing that human qualities could alter perceptions and reshape expectations in the quiet moments. He remembered the small town he had left behind, the ordinary life he had led, and the simple principles that had guided him. Those principles, honesty, empathy, and respect for others, were now at the center of interstellar politics. He realized that humanity's greatest advantage was not technology or power, but the ability to act with moral clarity and to maintain integrity. Under pressure, the humans also noticed changes in the alien population. Advisors who had once been suspicious began to listen more, ask questions, and consider new ideas. Even some of the more skeptical nobles began to engage in dialogue. Recognizing that humanity's approach offered a different kind of strength, John's presence, calm and consistent, had started to influence the court's thinking in ways that no human diplomat could have. Predicted as tensions gradually eased, the humans were invited to participate in planning for the heir's education, cultural exposure, and moral guidance. John's insights were valued not because he held authority, but because his perspective was grounded in experience, integrity, and empathy. The queen observed with quiet satisfaction, seeing that her choice was yielding results. Humanity, once seen as ordinary, was proving to be extraordinary through character and moral courage. One evening, John walked through the palace corridors with Lisa Brown, discussing the events of the past weeks. They marveled at the complexity of the alien society, the subtlety of its politics, and the patience required to navigate it. John noted that, while humans were new to this galaxy, their ability to act with honesty and fairness could bridge divides that technology or power alone could not. Lisa agreed, adding that the journey was as much about teaching humanity's values as it was about learning from the aliens. The story of John Carter and the humans spread quietly within the court. What had begun as disbelief and skepticism transformed into curiosity and respect. The humans were no longer mere visitors. They were participants in shaping the future, demonstrating that even ordinary individuals could influence events on a galactic scale through integrity, empathy, and moral clarity. As the first major challenge passed, John understood that the journey was far from over. The court remained unpredictable, and tensions could flare again at any moment. Yet he also knew that humanity's approach, grounded in honesty, fairness, and care, would continue to earn trust and respect. He felt a quiet confidence that, no matter what came next, the human way of acting with integrity would remain a guiding force. The days continued with careful observation, dialogue, and collaboration. Humanity was learning from the alien empire, and the empire was learning from humanity. John Carter, a man who had once been ordinary, had become central to a story that transcended stars and civilizations. He had shown that even in the most powerful court in the galaxy, the qualities that defined humans' courage, empathy, and integrity could shape the future. by the end of this period. It was clear that humans had passed an unspoken test. The court, once skeptical and divided, had begun to recognize the value of humanity's presence. John's calm courage and moral clarity had turned suspicion into cautious respect, and ordinary human qualities had begun to influence extraordinary outcomes. The Empire and humanity had taken the first steps toward a partnership built not on force or fear, but on shared values and understanding. And so, John Carter continued to navigate this world, aware that every choice mattered, that every interaction shaped perceptions, and that humanity's strength lay not in domination, but in the power to act rightly. Even when the stakes were unimaginably high, the tension in the alien empire reached a peak when whispers of rebellion grew louder. Certain nobles could not accept the idea of a human influencing the heir's future. Secret meetings took place in shadowed halls, where plans were whispered and loyalties questioned. John Carter, aware of the risk, continued to act with calm honesty, refusing to show fear or arrogance. His presence alone became a test of character, both for humans and aliens. One day the palace was thrown into chaos. A sudden attack erupted within the city. Rebels moved quickly, attempting to seize control and challenge the Queen's authority. The humans, caught in the middle, were unarmed and vulnerable. Despite the danger, John's instincts guided him. He moved calmly, helping others navigate the confusion, providing directions and offering reassurance. His focus was not on fighting, but on keeping people safe. The Queen's guards responded with precision, protecting both the royal family and the humans. John observed their strategy, noting the discipline and strength of the alien forces. Yet even in the midst of organized defense, his presence had an impact. He calmly negotiated with captured attackers, appealing not to threats, but to reason. He spoke of the Empire's long history, the importance of unity, and the need to preserve life. His words, simple yet sincere, had a surprising effect. Some rebels hesitated, unsure how to respond to this human who spoke without fear. Meanwhile, human ships above prepared for contingencies. Commander Alex Turner and diplomat Lisa Brown knew that sending weapons would escalate the situation dangerously. Instead, they readied medical aid, environmental repair drones, and protective technologies that could help without causing harm. Their goal was not conquest, but support and stabilization. It was a clear demonstration that humanity's strength lay in assistance, not domination. John worked tirelessly through the conflict, moving from group to group, ensuring civilians were safe, and helping mediate disputes. He refused special treatment, despite his importance to the Queen. His insistence on remaining human, following human principles, amazed both humans and aliens. The Queen observed quietly, proud that he upheld integrity even under direct threat. She reinforced that the heir would inherit the lessons of courage and morality. Demonstrated by John, the chaos brought unexpected lessons. Humans saw the complexities of alien politics and the pressures of ruling an empire. The aliens, in turn, witnessed human resilience, empathy, and problem-solving under stress. John's actions, small yet significant, began to shift public opinion. Ordinary humans could act in extraordinary circumstances, and their choices had impact far beyond what anyone expected. As the conflict subsided, both humans and aliens worked together to repair damage and restore order. John assisted with rebuilding efforts, ensuring that human technologies were applied safely. He coordinated with alien engineers and medics, emphasizing collaboration rather than control. The act of shared work strengthened trust, demonstrating that humans were capable allies, not potential threats. The Queen used the aftermath as a teaching moment for her court. She highlighted John's actions, showing how ordinary human decisions, honesty, compassion could stabilize a crisis. The nobles who had opposed the human presence began to reconsider their positions. They saw that strength was not only measured by power, but by the ability to act rightly in difficult circumstances. In quiet moments, John reflected on the events. He had faced danger, observed fear, and seen the consequences of rebellion. Yet he had also witnessed the value of integrity, the importance of empathy, and the impact of calm reasoning. Humanity's principles, tested in the midst of chaos, proved themselves once more. John realized that his role was not to dominate or control, but to demonstrate that moral courage could influence outcomes. Even in an alien empire, the humans above continued to support quietly, providing supplies and assistance where needed. Their actions were observed closely by alien citizens, who noticed the lack of aggression or self-interest. Humanity's willingness to help without expectation of gain impressed many who had previously been skeptical. John's example, mirrored by his colleagues, reinforced the idea that humans could be trusted with responsibility. Even in high-stakes situations, days turned into weeks as stability returned to the palace. The Queen continued her lessons on leadership, emphasizing values over authority. John participated, offering insights into human decision-making, collaboration, and conflict resolution. The lessons resonated, especially with those who had witnessed the recent unrest. Humans were no longer passive observers. They were participants in shaping the Empire's recovery. John also took time to engage with ordinary alien citizens. He shared stories of human communities, explained simple ways humans resolve disputes, and demonstrated small acts of kindness. These interactions, humble in appearance, had a profound effect. Citizens saw humans as more than outsiders. They saw them as beings, capable of thoughtful action and empathy. The aftermath of the coup attempt also revealed deeper truths. The Queen's choice of John as the future parent of her heir was not just symbolic. It represented a bridge between species, a merging of values that could guide the next generation. John understood that his calm actions, honesty, and refusal to exploit the situation had shown the Queen her court, and the citizens of the Empire that humanity's strength lay in integrity and courage. The humans documented the events carefully. Commander Alex Turner and diplomat Lisa Brown noted the lessons learned, emphasizing that humanity's approach was effective because it relied on trust, moral clarity, and support rather than weapons or intimidation. John, meanwhile, focused on personal interactions, ensuring that his behavior consistently reflected human values. Every conversation, every decision, became an example of how humans could influence a powerful empire without resorting to force. The Queen praised John privately, telling him that his actions had inspired change not only in her court, but also within the hearts of the people. She affirmed that the heir would inherit lessons of courage, empathy, and responsibility demonstrated by humans. John listened, understanding that his role was not about glory or power, but about shaping the moral foundation for a new era, as peace settled over the palace. John reflected on the journey so far. He had been thrust into situations of unimaginable pressure, yet he had maintained his principles. He understood now more than ever that humanity's greatest power was its ability to act rightly, even when the outcome was uncertain. The Queen's trust, the respect of the court, and the cautious admiration of the citizens were all products of simple, consistent behavior rooted in human integrity. In the following weeks, the humans continued to work alongside the aliens to ensure stability and recovery. Reconstruction efforts, cultural exchanges, and collaborative planning became the norm. John's presence, calm and deliberate, provided reassurance and guidance. His ordinary qualities, empathy, honesty, courage, were transforming into extraordinary influence. The humans were being recognized not for dominance, but for their capacity to act with principle and care. The experience left a lasting impression on both humans and aliens. The coup attempt, while dangerous, had become a test of character. Humanity had passed, demonstrating that moral courage and integrity could stabilize a crisis and inspire trust across species. John's ordinary human behavior had become a catalyst for understanding, respect, and cooperation. In quiet moments, John would walk through the palace gardens, reflecting on the events. He thought about his life back on Earth, the simplicity of human communities, and the everyday choices that had shaped his character. He realized that those same choices, repeated consistently, had gained extraordinary value in an alien empire. Resilience, empathy, and integrity had become his tools, guiding him through situations that no training or technology could fully prepare him. 4. The Queen's observation of humanity had proven insightful. John's actions, the collaboration of his colleagues, and the measured response of the human delegation showed that ordinary humans could influence even the most powerful civilizations. The Heir's future, once uncertain, was now linked to a legacy of moral courage, cooperation, and principled action. And so, life in the palace began to stabilize. Humans and aliens continued to work together, sharing knowledge, values, and experiences. John Carter remained a steady presence, demonstrating through his actions that humanity's strength lay in character, not force. The coup attempt, while dangerous and frightening, had ultimately highlighted the power of ordinary humans acting with integrity. It had shown that courage, empathy, and moral clarity could shape events, influence perceptions, and prepare the way for a future where humans and aliens could coexist, learn from each other, and build a shared legacy of strength and understanding after weeks of careful observation. Collaboration and recovery. The alien empire began to settle into a new rhythm. The rebellion had been contained, order restored, and trust slowly rebuilt. John Carter, as always, remained focused on his role, understanding that influence was measured not by authority or power, but by the consistent demonstration of values and integrity. The Queen continued to guide her court, emphasizing cooperation, accountability, and moral courage. She included humans in discussions about governance reforms, education for the heir, and strategies to strengthen the empire without relying solely on force. John's insights were increasingly valued not because he was human, but because he consistently spoke with honesty, humility, and thoughtfulness. The alien nobles who had previously opposed the human presence began to see the benefits of collaboration. The calm, reasoned actions of John and his colleagues demonstrated that humans could be trusted to participate responsibly. Citizens who had once viewed humans with suspicion now observed them as allies. Examples of how moral clarity and empathy could guide decision-making in ways that technology and power alone could not achieve. John continued to engage with both the alien citizens and his human colleagues. He shared stories of Earth, of human communities working together to overcome challenges, of people helping each other in ways that were small but significant. He explained how humans made choices based on empathy, loyalty, and the greater good, rather than solely on personal gain or fear. The aliens listened intently. Fascinated by a perspective that had rarely been considered in their long history, Commander Alex Turner and diplomat Lisa Brown worked alongside John to formalize protocols for human-alien collaboration. They emphasized transparency, ethical responsibility, and the value of mutual understanding. These measures were designed not to control or dominate, but to build trust and demonstrate that humans could contribute positively to governance and society. The lessons learned from the rebellion and from John's measured actions guided their decisions as the heir grew within the Queen's care. Discussions about education and upbringing became central. John provided input on human approaches to learning, critical thinking, and moral reasoning. The Queen encouraged a balance between alien traditions and human values, emphasizing that the child's strength would come not only from power, but from the ability to understand, empathize, and act rightly in a complex universe. John's role was advisory. His presence symbolized the potential of humanity's qualities to shape the future. The palace itself became a place of cultural exchange and learning. Humans and aliens shared technologies, scientific methods, and ideas about society and governance. John often walked among the gardens and halls, observing interactions and noting how simple human behaviors in honesty, patience, cooperation were gradually influencing the court. Even those who had been skeptical began to recognize the unique strengths humans offered. Small acts of trust and collaboration multiplied across the empire. Humans assisted in rebuilding damaged districts, offered guidance on sustainable practices, and helped mediate disputes that arose from lingering tensions. John's example, combined with the efforts of his colleagues, demonstrated that humanity's impact was not through domination or power, but through consistent, principled action. One day, John found himself in a council meeting with the Queen and several senior advisors. Discussions focused on long-term strategies for governance, education, and the integration of human insights into alien practices. John spoke calmly, offering perspectives on collaboration, ethical decision-making, and the importance of resilience. His words, grounded in experience and humility, resonated with many in the room. Even some of the nobles who had once opposed him nodded quietly in agreement. Outside the council chambers, citizens observed the evolving relationship between humans and aliens. They saw humans contributing without seeking privilege, helping without expecting reward, and acting with integrity in all circumstances. This had a profound effect, fostering a sense of partnership and respect. The Queen's choice to include John in these matters was increasingly validated by the observable benefits to the Empire. As months passed, the Empire began to implement reforms inspired by human principles of accountability and shared responsibility. Councils were created to provide diverse perspectives, drawing on both alien and human insights. Education programs incorporated lessons on empathy, problem-solving, and collaboration. These changes were subtle but transformative, reinforcing the idea that strength was not only measured by power, but by the ability to act wisely and ethically. John continued to serve as a bridge between the species. He maintained his humility, never seeking recognition, but quietly influencing decisions through example. His presence reminded both humans and aliens that ordinary individuals, acting with integrity and courage, could shape extraordinary outcomes. He remained committed to demonstrating that humanity's values were not abstract ideals, but practical tools for navigating complex challenges, the Queen often observed. John's interactions with her court and citizens, she spoke privately with him, affirming that his actions had created a foundation of trust and understanding. She reminded him that the heir would inherit not only alien power, but also the lessons demonstrated by humans' resilience, empathy, and moral courage. John listened, understanding that his role was less about control and more about setting an example for the future. The humans' reputation continued to grow. Their efforts in reconstruction, cultural exchange, and ethical guidance earned admiration across the Empire. Citizens who had once doubted the value of humanity now saw them as partners and allies. The lessons from the rebellion and the demonstration of moral courage had lasting effects, creating a precedent for future cooperation and mutual respect. John also continued to engage in quiet acts of mentorship, guiding young aliens in problem-solving, ethical decision-making, and collaboration. These interactions, simple but consistent, reinforced the broader lessons the Queen sought to instill in her heir. John's ordinary human qualities, patience, empathy, honesty, became tools for shaping the next generation and strengthening bonds between species. Even as the Empire stabilized, John remained aware that challenges could arise at any moment. Yet he also knew that the principles he demonstrated, moral courage, integrity, and empathy, would continue to guide both humans and aliens. The influence of humanity was now woven into the Empire's practices, not through dominance, but through trust, example, and consistent action. In quiet moments, John reflected on his journey. He had left Earth as a systems engineer, an ordinary man, had been thrust into circumstances that tested him in ways he never imagined. Yet he had remained himself, acting with honesty, courage, and empathy. Those simple human qualities had proven powerful, shaping perceptions, influencing decisions, and laying the groundwork for a shared future. The Queen's heir, still young and growing, symbolized the unity between the species. John understood that the child's future would be guided by lessons from both alien and human experiences. The integration of values, ethics, and cooperation represented a new chapter in galactic history, one where humanity's strength was measured not by conquest or technology, but by the ability to act rightly and inspire trust across species. As the final days of this period unfolded, Humans and aliens continued to work together, building a foundation for lasting collaboration. John Carter remained at the heart of this effort, a quiet but powerful example of what ordinary humans could achieve. His actions had transformed perceptions, influenced governance, and established principles that would guide the empire for generations. The story concluded not with battles or grand displays of power, but with a lasting legacy of trust, moral courage, and partnership. Humanity had been seen, valued, and integrated into the future of an ancient empire. John, an ordinary man by human standards, had become extraordinary through his integrity, empathy, and courage. The Queen's proclamation had proven true in every sense, and the galaxy now recognized that humanity's greatest power was the ability to act rightly, even when the stakes were unimaginably high. And so, the humans remained not as conquerors, but as partners, teachers, and examples of moral strength. The alien empire flourished with new insights, and the Heir grew under the guidance of both species. John Carter's journey, from ordinary engineer to symbol of human potential, became a story passed down for generations, a story of courage, integrity, and the enduring power of humanity to shape the future with wisdom and heart. After the initial reforms and collaborations had taken root, life in the Empire began to enter a period of stability. But new challenges emerged that tested both humans and aliens in unexpected ways. John Carter, now familiar with the court and the responsibilities that came with his unique position, understood that influence was not a final achievement, but a continuous effort. Each day presented opportunities to guide, learn, and strengthen the bond between species. The Queen, ever vigilant, continued to rely on John's perspective, not because he wielded authority, but because he offered clarity, empathy, and a human understanding of choices and consequences. She observed that humans approach problems differently, often considering not just immediate results, but the emotional and social implications of decisions. This perspective became invaluable as the Empire faced economic, environmental, and social challenges that had been previously neglected.